Well, hello everyone. Hope you're doing well today. It is Thursday, January 16th, 2019, and my name is Raphael Garcia, and I'm back for yet another edition of the Let's Chat Wrestling podcast. Let's talk wrestling, whatever the hell I'm calling it. Actually, I got to work on it. I just got to get the name down pat. But we're back for episode number 8, and I have a pretty interesting topic to talk about today where we're talking about the slippery slope of sexuality when it comes to the women on the WWE roster. And unfortunately, I thought of that name. Didn't really mean there to be a pun there, but hopefully no one takes offense to it or thinks of it any other way. It's just a name that I came up with as I was working on the rundown for today's show, but that's neither here nor there. As always, thank you for listening to our content, finding us here at MMAratings.net. You can catch me and all of my ramblings about sports and everything else on Twitter at rgarcia_sports. You can catch our content at MMAratings.net, where we mainly talk about mixed martial arts, but this is a show we've been working on probably for the last like 2 to 3 months now, focusing on professional wrestling. So you will see some of our content there begin to include pro wrestling on that platform as well. So be sure to check us out there. You can find us on Instagram as well at MMA Ratings Net. You can catch us there and on Twitter as well. That's also our official Twitter handle. So please be sure to like and share our content here if you like what we're talking about. And also give us a subscribe. Our numbers are slowly going up, which I appreciate. So thank everyone for doing so. And I hope that you like our brand of MMA content and professional wrestling content as well. So with that in mind, I want to go ahead and jump into today's topic where we're talking about sexuality and the women on the WWE roster and a little bit in professional wrestling as a whole, where I think we're headed to some unfortunate times, at least when it comes to the WWE, because we've had probably a pretty strong resurgence of women on the roster for the last 3 heading into 4 years. Look back maybe around 2015 is when things began to change for the women on the roster. We all remember the Attitude Era where Trish Stratus and Lita and what's her name, Sable, and all those other women were doing like Braun Penny's matches. The Dudleys were putting all the women through tables. I remember when Ed and Lita did that sex showcase to celebrate his winning the title. There were so many different questionable moments of how the women were treated and positioned on the WWE roster back then that around 2015 is when we saw things begin to change. You can even go back a little bit before that with the Divas division. Well, yeah, that name in and of itself isn't the correct term when talking about women's athletes and putting them on the same platform as the men. But you did see some great competitors and athletes in that division, such as AJ Lee. She kind of really she did a lot of when it came to progressing that division towards the end. And as much as people talk shit about the Bellas, they are someone who continue to evolve and continue to build themselves up as wrestlers and as feature personalities in the division as well. So even before 2015, we did see some changes within the WWE, but really around that year is when we saw things begin to really kind of turn a corner. And you saw that within NXT first. We can always point back to the Four Horsewomen of Charlotte, Sasha Banks, Bayley, and Becky Lynch as really like the catalyst for a lot of the changes that we saw with the women within the WWE roster. But a lot of people often forget about Paige and the fact that she was one of the first ones. She really kind of pushed the barrier when it came to the types of storylines she was involved in and her perception as a character as well. Yeah, she was a Divas champion at one point in time, but I think she still holds the record of being the youngest person to hold it when she won it at 21 years old. But even her presence and her character and her development made her, I want to say, probably the real starting point when you want to talk about the women's evolution or women's revolution, whatever it's actually called. But we look back to 2015 as a moment when that really began to change. We saw Sasha and Bayley become the first 2 women to headline a pay-per-view when they headlined NXT Takeover Respect with the I Quit match. Or was it I Quit match, or was it? It was a no. It wasn't I Quit match. It was a Iron Man match. Excuse me. They were actually the first women to ever be involved in a match like that, and they tore it up. It's still considered. Many people consider it to be the best women's match in the WWE history. And it's actually the reason why so many people were upset that we didn't get that feud. Or haven't gotten it yet. I'm not gonna end hope quite yet. But haven't gotten it on the main roster to date. So we have those four women continuing to build themselves up and doing great things in NXT. And then it came a point where they got called up to the main roster in 2016, and we really saw a big change at that point in time. I still remember when Charlotte, Becky, Sasha, the main three, and Bayley was left in NXT when they debuted on Raw, and they were paired with other women that had been on the roster for an extended period of time. I mean, Sasha was paired with Tamina and Naomi, I believe. Um, I can't remember who Becky was paired with or Charlotte as well, but they were put together in groups. And from there, the groups were kind of like the first part that they were the first, I guess, preview of how things ended up being today. But you definitely saw a lot of the women begin to elevate themselves. Of course, Sasha and Charlotte were the most prominent. I mean, they headlined Hell in a Cell, the first time women ever had that type of match. They were being placed in main event segments, major storylines on brands, and the biggest thing was that the storylines weren't looking at the women as objects. They weren't because they weren't fighting over a man or having men fighting over them. They weren't looked at as managers or valets. They weren't put in a position where they were subservient, for lack of a better term. Instead, they were equals. More involved in storylines that meant more than what we saw back in the day. And I'm not taking anything away from what Trish and everyone else did all those years ago because they were fantastic at their job. They did. I mean, hell, I've been pushing for Victoria to be in this year's Women's Rumble because she's my favorite women's wrestler of all time. And she was like just a dynamo back then. So don't think of the earlier eras as negative wholly when it comes to women's wrestling. They definitely had their good parts, their strong moments. Without those moments, we wouldn't be enjoying what we have today. But what we have today, and the reason why I kind of paused there, I'm going to say it is better than what we saw back in the past because the women are treated better or positioned better on the main roster, and especially in NXT and across all the WWE brands. I'm definitely going to say that they are positioned better. If you have an opportunity, go back and watch the Toni Storm and Rhea Ripley match from NXT UK Takeover Liverpool, I believe that's where, or Blackpool, this past Saturday. Fantastic match. And it kind of tells you, I mean, they're 22 and 23 years of age, so it shows you that the future of women's wrestling is fine. There's a wealth of talent uh, in that area. I mean, even the Four Horsewomen, I think Charlotte's the oldest at 30 and Sasha is the youngest at 26. So there's so much talent when it comes to women's wrestling across the board that we shouldn't be upset or we shouldn't be apprehensive in thinking about what the future holds because the talent is there. The question is, how is the WWE going to position that talent? How are they going to use that talent? You saw some pretty big moments in 2018 that gave us all hope that this is going to be a good year and we're heading towards the right direction. I mean, in 2018, we got the first women's rumble that Oscar won. We got, was this year the first women's Money in the Bank or was last year? I can't really remember, but I know Alexa's been Money in the Bank winner once, and also Carmella. So I can't remember who was first, but we had those moments recently. We had the first women's Elimination Chamber, which I thought was a great match. It was a great moment for Alexa Bliss as well. We had these moments in 2018. Then there was WWE Evolution, the all women's card that, in my opinion, was probably the best card of the year. I mean, it was great from start to finish. I didn't like the Battle Royal for a title shot that I think Naomi won and never got a shot from. No, Nia won. Naomi won the WrestleMania one. But that was a hell of a card. It was a great event. Probably one of the better cards of the year. Are they going to do it again? I think so. I hope so. because there are a lot of storylines there to tell, but we don't really know. I think the reaction to it was widely critically acclaimed. It was a good event for the most part, and I definitely do believe it was a better one of the year. But after that, even right before, I would say some things began to change, and I say that because I look back at that moment. I wrote about this actually for Daily DDT. You can find their content, a lot of wrestling content. They actually just put something out today about Finn Balor and Brock Lesnar. Go check it out. But you notice around Evolution, some things begin to change. The first thing that kind of caught my eye was the promotion for WWE Evolution featured all white women, all white blonde women. Rousey, Bliss, and Charlotte. No minorities were pictured on any of the promotional materials until they unveiled that one image that had the whole roster on there, where obviously they're going to have everyone on the roster. But even heading into the show, it was clear that everything was going to feature around a few women, and what everyone else had to look forward to was being lumped together. I mean, you had you had Sasha, Bailey, and Natty against the Riot Squad. You had a lot of different tag team matches. You had, I don't even remember. Let me pull up the whole card because now I'm curious. Let's see what the whole card was. So you had Trish Stratus and Lita beating Mickey James and Alicia Fox. Nia won the Battle Royal. Tony Storm defeated Io Shirai. Sasha Banks, Bailey, and Natalia defeated the Riot Squad. Shayna Baszler defeated Kairi Sane. Becky Lynch defeated Charlotte Flair. And Ronda Rousey defeated Nikki Bella. So those were the matches that were the on the first card of of the All Women's pay per view. But what I was talking about was that we saw things begin to change around there. What we saw was that more and more of the storylines begin to feature the women put together in groups instead of being looked at as individuals. We saw the piss poor storytelling between Bailey and Banks that made them two look like fools, and it devalued them greatly, and to the point where they were almost second thought the as the spotlight was placed on Rousey, Banks, and Rousey, Bliss, and Nia Jax on the main roster, on the main Raw roster. Then you also saw like a lot of the focus was being placed on women that looked a certain way. I mean, Oscar over on SmackDown was getting devalued. I mean, we're talking about the woman who had a 2-year undefeated streak. She lost to Charlotte last year at WrestleMania, and then she just kind of fell into obscurity. Same thing with Naomi. She's a former two-time champion. Just kind of went away. Ember Moon, she's been on the main roster, and she hasn't had any big moments to this day. But you see the same women that look the same, fit the same demographic, getting the prime placement, and that's a backward step, in my opinion. It definitely makes it clear who are the priority when it comes to looking at these women and deciding who's going to be the big star, and also shows you what type of demographic that the WWE is trying to cater to first. What standard of beauty are they putting up there first? And this is one that definitely stands out there because it's clear that these people are not these people, you people, how I make the joke. But it's clear that these women are the priorities when you look at the WWE roster and how everyone is placed from week in and week out. So that brings me to what occurred this past weekend on both Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. First with Raw, obviously, because it was on Monday. We saw Alexa. She has her Moment of Bliss talk show on Monday Night Raw, which is a pretty good segment. I mean, we've seen, well, I'm not gonna lie, we've seen some bad ones, but we've seen some pretty decent ones as well. But before that segment went live on Raw, she was in the dressing room where one of the, I guess, producers or one of the cameramen or whoever the hell it was walked in on her changing, and she had her shirt over her chest, basically looking surprised, looking like, half dressed, whatever it was. And it really harkened back to the type of storylines we would see back in the Attitude Era. It reminds me of the one where Stephanie McMahon caught Trish Stratus bending over in front of Triple H, or those various segments that Vince McMahon would be in with nearly all of the attractive blonde women that were on the roster at some point in time. So it really reminds me of a lot of those segments. And what was even more unfortunate about that is that in the Moment of Bliss segment, actually, when it came back from commercial, she announces the highly anticipated women's tag team titles, which is something that everyone had been looking forward to. So that announcement in and of itself was completely devalued immediately, because everyone was focusing on what happened right before that, Alexa Bliss with her shirt off on TV. And it completely devalued that moment. It almost makes you wonder how they are already going to value the women's tag team titles, because they don't value the men's tag team titles in any way, shape, or form. I mean, how many weeks has it been since we've seen them on TV, or how many weeks has it been since we've seen them or how many pay-per-views has it been since we've seen them with the prime placement on a card? If you think that the women's titles are going to get valued anymore, I find that hard to believe. Maybe at first, but over time, we're going to be asking the same questions about what happened to the prominence of these titles. And then, to make things even worse, you had Dozer of Heavy Machinery, who they're making their main roster debut, come out, and he's looking like a blabbering idiot, almost like Chris Farley. And if you're unfamiliar with who that is, please do a Google search of that comedian. But he looked like he was acting like Chris Farley, muttering stuff about Pretty Lady, looking at Bailey, and completely bringing the segment to an end. It was unfortunate, because they also had Paul Heyman out there, and he wasn't even saying anything. He wasn't even looking like his usually stellar promo machine that he is today. And you all, at the end of the day, you had to worry, like, what was the point of this entire segment? It looked like it wasted so much time, and it wasted all of their talent that you see there at the same time. And it harkens back to times where women were objectified in a way on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown, where it was just unnecessary. And it even gets worse the next day on SmackDown, where we see the continuation of the story between Mandy Rose and Naomi, where obviously Mandy Rose is trying to break up Naomi and Jimmy. I think it's Jimmy that she's married to, Uso, where out of spite. And while Mandy's playing this character so damn well, it's unfortunate that this is the way that they decide that they have to leverage her talent, because she's getting better. I'm not going to sit here and say she's a star, but it was clear that they wanted to do something with her the minute they brought her up to the main roster. But it's unfortunate that this is what they wanted to do with her, and this is what they're doing with her at this moment in time. So what ended up happening is Mandy invited Jimmy back to, let me look and see which Uso is married to Naomi, because that's one other thing. Okay, so she's married to Jimmy. Okay, so I was right. So okay, first and foremost, he knows what Mandy Rose is trying to do. Everyone watches the show. It's clear what she's trying to do, but he still goes to her hotel, and she's there in a bathrobe, I think, takes it off. She's in her bra, and she's in her underwear. It was revealing, but probably just as much as revealing as her professional wrestling attire. And then Naomi walks in and beats her up. As I wrote about over a holiday break, early January, the piece was published, and it's been getting a lot of traffic since. But the optics from a racial standpoint in this storyline is just unfortunate. You have a white woman trying to break up an interracial marriage. It's something that you've seen, on various movies. You've heard about it. It's a stereotype that clearly, it's a stereotype that bothers. It's a stereotype that bothers minority women to this day, and it's a serious problem. At the end of the day, though, I mean, there's been segments where even she's, compared her to a banana, which throws out the insinuation that she's comparing her to a monkey. She's done such things as try to touch Naomi's hair. It's just not a good look from start to finish. And this is almost like this is the best storyline that they have thought of to use both of these talented women. And what this brings me to is that a report came out today. Dave Meltzer was talking on the Wrestling Observer, and he mentioned that the reason why the WWE is doing this is because they're trying to see how much they can get away with. This new era that we're in, or this era of wrestling that we're in, is called the new era. That's what they're calling it today, and it's not. So far, it doesn't seem to be too new. It seems to be more of a rehash of what we've seen in recent years and past eras. Yes, we're getting new contenders and new challengers and stuff like that, but nothing about this looks really new. And if they're testing what they can get away with from a sexual standpoint with the women on a roster, that makes you wonder just how far are they willing to go, because remember their content is still PG rated, and there's only so much that they can do and get away with. So it brings me to the idea that this is opening up a very slippery slope. I mean, we know that the demographic that watch WWE content is mostly male, probably mostly white male within the 18 to 34 demographic. That demographic is going to enjoy what they saw on Monday, enjoy what they saw on Tuesday. If you look at the WWE YouTube channel, which I think has 43 million subscribers, the Alexa Bliss segment is the highest viewed segment this week with 4.3 million views. The hotel segment with Mandy Rose and Naomi has 1.6 million. The only other two segments that crack 1 million views is the Fatal 4-Way, in which Finn Balor won, and Braun flipping the limo at the start of Monday Night Raw. So what this tells me is that if I was looking at this from a marketing metric standpoint, the way to get viewership on the women is to include them as some type of scantily clad or sexual type of storyline. I'm not saying that's the right way to go about it, but I'm just saying that that's the type of influence that can be made from these viewer metrics. All the other women's segments that don't involve Alexa Bliss have 200, 300, maybe 400K views, or some of the lower rated or the lower viewed videos that they have from this week. So that type of feedback, and I use feedback in air quotes, doesn't help the conversation much. Yes, there are some voices on social media that speak out against these moments, that speak out against these issues. And while that is there, I personally don't believe those voices are loud enough to truly make a change when it comes to what the WWE is doing. The only type of change that they would probably understand is if people stop watching. And also on top of that, their ratings went up 17% this week. And that, while I mean, most people are going to point to the fact that there wasn't an Monday night NFL game, which is totally true. But that's another influence that can be made with, hey, these type of segments are drawing in viewers, so let's bring them back. And that is going to be an unfortunate step. That's going to be a step in a bad direction because it doesn't benefit any of the women on the roster. It would have been, and even though there will be a few that will get permanently placed, I mean, I know someone like Peyton Royce and Billie Kay would thrive in the atmosphere like this. Carmella would probably thrive in an atmosphere like this. The names like Becky Lynch, Asuka, probably Sasha Banks, Bailey, they would all fall back on this side. This is not the type of content, type of positioning that they should be getting used in. And while we see them not getting used in that way right now, you must hope, or you must wonder just how far back the WWE leadership is willing to go to kind of get these ratings back to where they want to be. What type of antics and tactics are they going to take? So if we continue on within this topic, what I find interesting is that this is coming around a time where women's wrestling as a whole is at a height right now. I just got done watching David Starr and Pop, aka Neville, tearing it up at Defiant this past weekend. There's so much content, so much wrestling content that's going on in other promotions that you have a diversity in what you want to watch. And women's wrestling is also flourishing as well. I mean, obviously the you do like what's going on in the WWE women's roster. Their placement is positive. I'm not going to say it's totally not, but you have organizations like AEW saying that they're going to give women equal footing on the card, on the roster, and also give these women equal pay, which is huge. You don't hear about that anywhere else. You see organizations like New Japan having a conversation about how should women be brought into their fold, because right now they don't, which would be a massive improvement for that company. You have organizations like Stardom, Shimmer. Um, well, actually, I just saw today Gene Buss, who is the owner of the Lakers, of the Jerry Buss family. Jerry Buss's daughter is launching Women of Wrestling, Wow Wrestling on Access, which also houses um, New Japan, which is under Mark Cuban. Like that is those are big steps. The wrestling business is booming right now, and it shows that women are a big part of that, which is perfectly how it should be. I'm not the biggest fan of intergender wrestling, but you see that going on across so many different promotions, and they're putting on fantastic matches. This is a time and place where women should be welcome in the industry, and not welcome in the way because they're sexual objects. Not in that fashion. I mean, I sometimes cringe at what Scarlett Bordeaux is doing over in Impact, but it's working for her right now, so it is what it is. Unfortunately, there's a loud contingent pushing back against that idea, and that's the demographic that watches and consumes more professional wrestling content than the other voice that does not, or the other voice that pushes back on the idea of how women should be treated or how women are being treated in the space right now. So that's really where we are today, because what's unfortunately happening is I hope that this was just a test that we do not see going forward. Unfortunately, I've been joking, not joking, but I've been saying that we're going to see next week that Dozer is going to be the one that walks in on Alexa Bliss. We're going to see some type of segment with those two that isn't going to be done well. And I hope that we do not see more of these women used as sexual objects in the near future, because that's just not the right direction to go with it. It doesn't do anyone any favors in the end. At the end of the day, I think it's going to hurt wrestling more than not just women's wrestling, but it's going to hurt men's wrestling as a whole too. Because right now, the women are probably the best thing about so many of these shows, but it's going to hurt wrestling as a whole, and at the end, it's not going to do anyone any favors. So, with that in mind, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this show. Again, my name is Raphael Garcia. You can find my content on Twitter at rgarcia_sports, where I talk wrestling, mostly wrestling and MMA now. I've gotten out of the professional football games. I talk some NBA too as well. I haven't really been following as much. I got to get back on that. But check me out there, rgarcia_sports. Follow MMA Ratings Net on Twitter as well, where you can see our updates about our new pieces that myself, Adam Martin, Shalon Hughes, Michael Ford write every week. You can see our content on the website there. You can see our podcast that we do every Thursday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can follow us on Instagram at the same post as well, where we talk MMA and pro wrestling there as well too. So like and subscribe to our channel here so you can stay up to date and get all the updates as we launch them live. And as I said, thank you for listening to our content today. I appreciate you doing so. And catch me back here next Wednesday where I'll be talking about another topic within professional wrestling. With that in mind, stay safe, enjoy your weekend, and everyone have a great weekend.